L'kutei Sichos Chaye Sara Gimel Lili Nishmas Rav Yosef Binyamin Ben Rabbi Menashe Kaltman. It's been a while since we learned a Rashi Sikha together. This one is a very geschmack Rashi. Once again, every single word, the Dibur HaMaschil, even the things that Rashi adds at the end are all precise and exactly to explain to us what the pasuk means, and it actually leads to a very important lesson, which is part of the launch of Mivtza Neshek, the Rebbe's Mivtza to encourage women and girls, even as young as 3 years old, to light Shabbos candles on Friday before Shabbos. And the pasuk in this week's parsha says that Yitzchak brought Rivka to the tent of his mother Sara, etc. Is Rashi maitik from the pasuk diverter ha'ayala Sara imay. Rashi quotes the words to the tent of Sara, his mother, and mefarish and explains as follows: Vayiviyah ha'ayala, he brought her to the tent. Vaharehi Sara imay, and behold, she is Sara, his mother. Kalaymar, meaning v'nas is dugma Sara imay, she became like his mother Sara. She calls Mansha Sara kayemes, as long as Sara was alive. Her candle was lit from Friday to Friday. And there was a blessing in the dough. And a cloud was suspended over the tent. When Sarah passed away, these miracles ceased. And when Rivka arrived, Chazru, these miracles returned. I just want to point out that bracha metzuya beisa, which for some reason is very often explained as the bread remained fresh from Friday to Friday. So I'm not sure what the makar of that is. The Chaye, the pshat of bracha metzuya beisa, means that there was a bracha. It was a blessed dough, that it would rise properly and it would bake it would bake well. There's a Rashi in Saita that says, unrelated to the story, bracha metzuya beisa, that the doughs in the oven, they rose and they swelled up so well that they stick to one another. But either way, there was a very special bracha in the dough. The candles were lit from Friday to Friday, and there was a cloud suspended over the tent. So therefore, Varehi Sara imay. So now when Rivka came back, so she too experienced these miracles, and so Rivka was just like Sara. The Mefarshim explain, the commentaries explain, as Rashi is medayik zayin pirush from Mvart ha'ayala. What is Rashi? What's the source? What is bothering Rashi? And what is Rashi? How is Rashi deriving this pshat, this meaning from the pasuk? So that Rashi is focusing on the word ha'ayala, v'shteit far Sara imay, which is written before the words Sara, his mother. The pshat will give we says that in pashtus. Sara imay is an uptight from ha'ayala in ayal fun Sara imay. If the meaning was simply that Sara imay is an explanation, a description of the tent, that this is the tent of his mother Sara, then it should have said to the tent of Sara, his mother. In Diktuk, when there's a kamatz at the end with a hey, it means two, just like it would have had a lamed in the beginning. So other le'oil Sara imay, or put the lamed in the beginning, to the tent of his mother Sara. So it could have said without the word ha'oyela. As ken aber nicht stehen ha'oyela mit ha'idea, was badait as shen yodu avem's eldesses. But it shouldn't say ha'oyela, the tent, with a hey that makes it known, that says that this is something that is well known, implying that this is that we already know whose tent this is, because it says Sara imay. If you have to tell me that it's Sarah's tent, then it doesn't have to say ha'oyela, the tent. We're about to explain which tent it is. Therefore, the Rashi Pirush as mit Vayiviyah Yitzchak Kayala is it in August lesson. So in this Rashi learns that when it says that Yitzchak brought her into the tent, pause, comma. This is the end of one part. When Sara imay is nachan Indian, and then Sara imay is telling us something else. Vaharehi Sara imay, that when he brought her to the tent, she became like his mother Sara. That's how the Mefarshim explain Rashi. This is in order 5. You see, this is the aim, the Gourarie, the Maskil David, the Chachamim, the Rashi. all of them Mefarshim. However, this explanation in Rashi, if the only purpose of the words ha'ayala Sara imay is to tell us that ha'ayala means that he brought her to the tent, and Sara imay is to tell us that she was like his mother Sara, and that's all that Rashi is coming to do, is aber nit verstandig. This leaves a few questions. Aleph. Question Aleph is going to focus on the very classic idea that the Rebbe teaches over and over again, that the Dibur HaMaschil of Rashi is precise. The words that Rashi chooses to quote from the pasuk are relevant and precisely chosen according to what Rashi wants to tell us. So why does Rashi have to quote the word imay? Well, according to these Mefarshim, we're learning from the fact that it says ha'ayala and then Sara, that ha'ayala means to the tent, and therefore Sara is something new. But the word imay is irrelevant here, according to the way these Mefarshim are learning. Rashi had no reason to quote it in the Dibur HaMaschil. Base. Second question. Why does Rashi have to bring up the miracles? The Chaye, if the taich the words ha'ayala Sara imay, you say ha'ayala, he brought it to the tent. Sara imay, and he could have just said that her actions, her conduct was as righteous as his mother Sara. Why does Rashi bring in? Where does Rashi derive the miracles from? In other words, if Rashi is trying to bring out that Rivka was like Sara, it could have been in something more simpler. She was as righteous as his mother. Question Gimel. So even if we were to accept that Rashi has a proof that there was a miracle here, seemingly, in the basic understanding of the pasuk, there's no evidence, there's no proof of what the nes was. Certainly, there's no proof, there's no reason to say there was more than one nes. And certainly, there's no proof in the pasuk that all of these three details occurred. And we see in the Pirush of Targum Yonis ben Uzziel, Hagamer is weiter von der Pshat wie Rashi. Although Targum Yonis ben Uzziel is generally further away from Pshat than Rashi is. And the Targum Yonis ben Uzziel, as I break not the prat from their dolok, he only brings the detail of the candles that were lit from Friday that remained lit from Friday to Friday. So even Targum Yonis ben Uzziel only brings one. So why couldn't Rashi suffice with one? So even if Rashi knew that Rashi sees in the pasuk somewhere that there is a nes here, it's not just her maisim were good. But how does Rashi derive that there was a more than one nes and these three specific nisim? Now, Voltke can't Sif Beis. Sif Beis, the Rebbe is going to suggest that this is why Rashi adds in Bereishis Rabbah, that some of these details are actually not directly derived from Pshuta Shel Mikra, but they are supported by the Medrash. So the Rebbe is going to explain why that can't be. We might try to explain that these three nisim, these three miracles that Rashi brings, are actually not derived directly from Pshuta Shel Mikra, nor break them drash from Medrash Rabbah in Shaychus from Shat HaKasuf. Rather, he's bringing the Medrash Rabbah in continuation, in connection with the Pshat. In the pasuk, Rashi understands that there must have been some sort of nes over here. We don't know yet why, but let's accept that for the time being. And then he brings the Medrash Rabbah to tell us what the nisim were. Und der fahrt zeichen Rashi on the Mocker beim Simon von seinem Pirush Bereishis Rabbah. That's where Rashi references the Bereishis Rabbah at the end of his Pirush to tell us that I'm actually leaning on the Medrash Rabbah for some of this Pirush. Warum von the Kisve Yad from Pirush Rashi is kentik, and the Rebbe adds something very important here, that from the manuscripts, the original manuscripts of Rashi, it's obvious as the Tzion Bereishis Rabbah da is as Rashi's lashon. that when it says here in this Rashi, it's actually Rashi's writing. Nita hisafa from the matikim wie bei Asach andere Maramekemis in sein Pirush, not an addition by the copy editors, who, like many other references in Rashi that were written in later by those who were publishing or rewriting the Pirush Rashi. This one, in the manuscript, you can see that Rashi himself added the words Bereishis Rabbah. So maybe let's say that Rashi adds it in here to tell us that these three miracles, he's basing it on the Medrash and not on Pshutis Mikra. Aber levad zoi. So first we're going to ask two questions on this paragraph, and then we're going to ask a much bigger question in the next paragraph. Levad says was onnemendik afilu as die drei gebracht in Yonim seine genommen yuset. Nor after Drosh of Bereishis Rabbah is nicht verstandig. First of all, if we accept that these three things that are brought in Rashi are based on the Medrash and not on the Pasuk, it's going to raise two questions. If Rashi is quoting the Medrash, why does Rashi omit the fourth detail that is brought in the Medrash? That the doors of the tent were open wide, which is another detail with which Sara was similar to Yitzchak's mother. Rivka was similar to Sara, Yitzchak's mother. Why does Rashi skip that? Beis, verwurschtelt Rashi de drei Perotim geendet und nochmal auf Erketten Seder, wie sie werden gerechnet in Medrash. Why does Rashi quote the Medrash in a different, and even more so in an opposite order than the Medrash does? In the Medrash it mentions firstly on Kosher al Pesach Hayil, then the bracha in the Isa in the dough, and then the Daluk, then the candles that were lit all week. And Rashi quotes it differently. First the Ner Daluk, then the bracha in the dough, and then the on the cloud on the oil. So those are two questions that we have on this idea. If Rashi is quoting the Medrash, why does Rashi stop after three details and not bring up the fourth detail? And why does Rashi quote them in an opposite order Then the Medrash does. And more than these two questions in the details of the way Rashi brings it down, there's a more general question if you want to say that Rashi is bringing down this drasha. So it's gered viel mal in asbaras atam. Was Rashi der Mond nicht mit der Chal der Maker von der Perushim was haben an Yesed mit Rashi Chazal. It's been discussed previously in previous Fabrengens, where the Rebbe discussed the different klalim of Rashi. The Rebbe explained why Rashi usually does not bring the source of where the Pirush is brought in Midrashim. Because even when Rashi brings something that's in a Medrash, when Rashi brings it, he's basing it on the Pshuta Shel Mikra. Is there Mokir, the Pshat HaKosov? In other words, the source is actually the meaning of the Pasuk and not the Bereishis Rabbah, or the Medrash, or a different reference that Rashi might have brought. Und Fall that Azal Pirush from Midrash Chazal is nitten ganz in the Pshuta Shel Mikra. And if there's a case, which sometimes happens, that Rashi brings a Medrash that is not entirely consistent with Pshuta Shel Mikra, when Rashi brings him door der Far, was der Pashto Pshat is nit glatik v'chadema, and the only reason why Rashi would bring it is because the simple meaning is not so smooth, it's not so understood, and therefore Rashi has to bring a Medrash. But demolt, but Rashi in his Maktim, Rabbi Sinu Dosh v'kiyetz. But if Rashi has to do that, he introduces that by saying this is a drash, this is a teaching of the Chachamim of the sages. So that's what Rashi usually does. Usually Rashi doesn't bring a reference because usually his pshat, even if it's in the Medrash, is based on the pasuk and not on the Medrash. And if it has to rely on the Medrash, he introduces it with Rabbi Senu Darshu. Isn't it moving? So now, so based on this, let's bring us back to this pasuk, to this Rashi. Not understood. If these three details are proven in Pshuta Shel Mikra, then Rashi doesn't need to mention Bereishis Rabbah at all. If there's no proof to it in the basic understanding of the pasuk, and only bringing it as a medrash that is only connected to the Pshuta Shel Mikra, but not directly derived from Pshuta Shel Mikra. So Rashi should have prefaced and emphasized Rabbi Seinu Darshu, that this is a drash of Rabbi Seinu. So the reference braces Rabbi at the end doesn't explain this, because either it's derived from the pasuk, or it has to be introduced more prominently Rabbi Seinu Darshu. So we're back to our question, or our questions. Number one, why does Rashi quote Ha'ayala Sara Imay and the word Imay as well in the Dibur HaMaschil? Number two, where does Rashi know from the Psutei Shel Mikra that these were Nisim that made Rivka comparable to Sarah? And even if we was to know that there was Nisim, where does Rashi in the pasuk see that there were three of them, three Nisim? And you can't say that he's relying on the Medrash because he doesn't say the words V'Rabbi Seinu Darshu. So in Siv Gimel, the Rebbe is going to explain that something else is bothering Rashi. What's bothering Rashi is not the word ha'ayala, like the Mefarshim explained. What's bothering Rashi is that all three words ha'ayala Sara Imay are extra, are superfluous, and therefore Rashi is going to learn. Rashi learns a whole new limud, and the Rebbe is going to change, not change. The Rebbe is going to teach us an entirely new understanding in this Rashi. Is the beer in them. The difficulty that Rashi is coming to address is in the alle drei Wörter ha'ayala Sara Imay, in all three words, thus at his maitik, which he quotes in his Dibur HaMaschil. Now we already know why Rashi. We asked, why did Rashi have these three words in the Dibur HaMaschil? Rashi quotes all three because what's bothering him is the presence of all three words in the pasuk. Because at first glance they are totally superfluous. The Torah is the Uishensuz der Seelen, as when Rivka is angekommen mit Eliezer. The Torah is here to tell us the following story. Rivka came with Eliezer, und Eliezer hat bald noch seindig in Drüsen, der zählt Yitzchak wegen alles, was mit ihm hat passiert. And Eliezer, immediately upon arrival, before they even went inside, Eliezer related to Yitzchak all of the occurrences that had happened with him. So then Yitzchak then brings Rivka into his home and took her as a wife. The pasuk could have said Yitzchak brought her to him, and then he took Rivka, and she was to him for a wife. What are the words ha'ayala Sara Imay contributing to the understanding of this event? Is der fun verstandig? Therefore Rashi concludes, as ha'ayala Sara Imay is meisif epis as in the Geatzim Oisfir, that the words ha'ayala Sara Imay add something that is relevant to the conclusion of the pasuk. That Yitzchak took Rivka and she became his wife. Der mitzog teire dem tam und sibe, was hat bavoigen Yitzchak in zu nehmen Rivka. With the words ha'ayala Sara Imay, the pasuk is telling us the reason that bavoigen means outweighed, that it convinced Yitzchak to take Rivka. Bis dem is ba'im nit gewen kin davar muchlot. Until ha'ayala Sara Imay, it wasn't a definite, it wasn't absolutely, it wasn't something that he was absolutely certain that he would do, and then something happened that is understood in the words ha'ayala Sara Imay, and this convinced Yitzchak that Rivka should be his wife. Das heißt, Eliezer hat erzählt Yitzchak wegen dem wunderlichen Nissen dicken Eufen. Wie es ist als geschehen, although Eliezer already told to Yitzchak the wondrous, miraculous manner in which this all played itself out, exactly according to the indications that he designated. As Rashi says, that Eliezer revealed the miracles that happened, that his trip was shortened, and Rivka all of a sudden appeared as he was concluding his davening. But those also Eliezer and Eliezer used all this as a proof. As this is the one that the Eibishter chose for your servant, for Yitzchak. As Rivka is mit ihrer Meiles pasik to sein Yitzchak's Freu. That Rivka, with her special qualities, is befitting to be Yitzchak's wife. Von deswegen, nevertheless, although Eliezer was convinced and told over the whole story and all of the miracles that occurred, nevertheless, Yitzchak is Yitzchak noch nicht given in ganzen sicher as he is take bedeumet zu seiner Mishpacha. Yitzchak was not yet fully certain that she is similar enough to his family. To seine Mutter Sara, to his mother Sara, in Tzidkis, v'chulu, in a righteousness. That was the whole purpose of Avram sending Eliezer to Avram's land, to Avram's place of birth, so that you'll find someone that is consistent with the values of his family. Biz es is given so Yitzchak was not yet convinced. Bizes is given until Yitzchak actually brought her into the tent. Then something happened that changed his mind, that convinced him that she was the right one, the right person. So if what happened is that Yitzchak's decision came about from the Yitzchak muss man sagen, als hat gesehen größere Nissim und Wunder von die Friedike. We must say that there were bigger miracles and bigger wonders than the earlier ones that happened to Eliezer. Welch haben gebracht die Fule is Damus zu Mishpachas Avram und zu Sara befragt, which brought out the total similarity between Rivka and the family of Avram, and more specifically to Sara. In other words, earlier we said in question Bays, how does Rashi know that there was Nissim? Maybe it was just that she was similar to Sara. So the Rebbe answers the question with saying that the fact that that she was righteous, he already knew from Eliezer. He even knew that there were Nissim from Eliezer, and those Nissim didn't convince him. So if something happened now to convince him, they had to be Nissim, and bigger Nissim than the ones that happened to Eliezer. And Rashi learns that these miracles are actually alluded to in the very words he saw a miracle that's connected with the word ha'ayala. Anes in zusammenhang mit Sara. A nest, a miracle that is connected with the word Sara. A nest in shaychas mit imay, and a nest that's connected with the word imay. So Rashi is learning the pasuk vayiviyah Yitzchak ha'ayala Sara imay. Yitzchak brought her into the tent. And there were three miracles, there were three nisim that are alluded to in the very words ha'ayala Sara imay. And again, that's why Rashi quotes all three in the Dibra Maschil, because all three are part of this discussion. Siv Dalid, now that Rebbe is going to explain us what the miracles are, an oisfirlich leighton seder, and let's express it, let's speak it out as it is according to the seder of the pasuk. Ha'ayala, mita hey hayadiyah. The first word is to the tent, with a hey that tells us that it's well known. A nes is verbunden mit dem oil, a nes that is connected with this tent. The says was telt us dem oil von alle andere oilim. A nest that distinguishes this tent from all of the other tents, as it's very angerufen, it's referred to as the tent with a hey, that means that it's known. Dem bakanten berimten oil, this well-known, famous tent. Und das führt zum Verstehen, and das meint on and kosher oil. So what would be a nes that is connected with the tent, this tent specifically, the cloud that was suspended over the tent? Very much in Endlich to them gelernt by pasuk. Very often when the Rebbe speaks a Rashi Sicha, where he's talking about the Ben Chamis the Mikra, the Rebbe brings the precedents. Is there a precedent to this? Is there not a precedent to this? So here we see like this, that there is a precedent. Much in Endlich to them gelernt by pasuk, vayares ha-mokim merochik. In last week's parsha, Parshas Vayera, when they were going to the Hara Moriah for the Akedas Yitzchak, it says he saw the place from afar. Das was a gewisser Mokim is ausgeteilt in Heiligkeit bis wird angerufen ha Mokim mit der Hayadiyah, that there's a certain place that is distinguished in its holiness from all the other places, and therefore it is called the place. He does given durch dem was on kosher alor, because there was a cloud that was suspended over the mountain. Versteht man as Eichda is the Adgasha ha'ela ha'ayidiyah. That also over here, where it says the tent with a hey, that's to imply that this is known, unzudaiten, afen selben nest, to imply the same type of nest. Von anon kasher ala oil, there was a cloud over the tent, and thus distinguished this tent from all the other tents. So when the pasuk says ha'ayala to the tent, it's referring to the cloud that distinguished this tent from all the other tents. Then we have the word Sara in the pasuk. A nes inazach was besonder shayches to Sara. It's a nes with something that is uniquely connected to Sara, which is also understood from a previous part in Chumash. Which we already learned about in Vayera. When the three malachim came disguised as guests, regular guests, Avram himself engaged with preparing and serving the food. The Torah, however, tells us about one exception to that. Avram rushed into the tent. And he said to Sara, quickly take the fine flour, knead it, and make ugais matzos. Despite the fact that Avram was totally making every effort to fulfill the mitzvah of Achnas HaZerchem. So much so that Avram, despite the pain that he was feeling that day, because it was the third day after his bris milah, nevertheless he ran to bring the calf. However, when it came to kneading, knetten means kneading, and preparing the dough in ganzen ibigalas for Sara, he left it for Sara entirely, because preparing the dough was Sarah's exclusive thing. Ubemela, wie bald in unser Pasuk is angedeit, as es geschehen an Nes b'yuchad in Epes, was hat stand mit Sara b'yuchad. So if the Pasuk says the word Sara, implying that there was a nes, a miracle that happened, that something that directly connected specifically with Sara, is move on, ados is given b'shayches mit der Isa, bracha matzuya b'Isa. So it must be connected with Sarah's thing, which was the dough, and therefore Rashi concludes that there was a blessing in the dough. Imay. Then the Pasuk says the word Imay. Euch ben chamis lemikra, weis bemerkt, Chotzer wegen dem noch nicht gelernt, als sind den Licht, Erev Shabbos, is an ausnahmlicher Inyan, was gehört zu frühem Bechlal und Befrat zu Imay. When it comes to Shabbos Licht, the Ben Chamis Mikra has not yet learned about it. Unlike the other two, that there's something that the Ben Chamis Mikra could reference. But nevertheless, even the Ben Chamis Mikra right away knows and notices that when it comes to lighting Shabbos candles, this is something that is uniquely connected to women in general and to his mother. When you say to the child, here was a nes that happened with the mother of Yitzchak. So the first reference that he has in his mind is Shabbos candles. Because as he sees his mother lighting candles every Erev Shabbos. Even though lighting Shabbos candles is not only connected to his mother, rather even women who are not yet married will light Shabbos candles, as we'll discuss later in the Sikha. He says, aber nit umetum, it's not always, not everywhere, sorry, unit alamol, and not every time. It's not as common as his mother lighting candles. It's possible that this young 5-year-old student of Rashi does not have a sister, or his sister is still a baby, and therefore is not yet lighting Shabbos candles. But his mother doesn't miss a Friday. So, and therefore, Ha'ayala teaches us about the anon. Sara teaches us about the bracha in the dough, and Imay teaches us about the candles that were lit Erev Shabbos, Erev Shabbos. Alpiz is verstandig, was Rashi bringt it up in Fertningen, mit welcher Rivke is given endlich zu Saren. Now we can answer the question that was referenced earlier. Why does Rashi not mention the fourth item that is mentioned in the Medrash? Wie wir gefindt es in Medrash? Wie bald das in Pashtus gefindt sich in Pasuk an ondait blaze of the drei Sachen, because simply the indication in the pasuk is to three things: Ha'ayala, Sara, and Imay. Since there's no indication in the pasuk to the fourth item, Rashi doesn't mention it. However, there's one question that remains. Where does Rashi derive the fact that they remained lit for 7 days? Even if they would be lit for 24 hours, it's also a big nes. If you prepare a candle that usually lasts for a few hours in the evening, and it goes through the whole night and through the whole day to the next day, it's already a nes. So the fact that it had to be a nes, we know because it had to be something that's greater than what Eliezer told over. So we know that it was a nes, and we know that it was a nes that was connected with the candles because it said the words imah. But how does Rashi know that that the candles lasted for 7 days? This question Rashi addresses by adding the words Beishas Rabbah. Just looking at it from the Pshat perspective, it leaves a doubt. We are unsure exactly how long the candles remained lit. But this is what the Bereishis Rabbah says, that the candles remained lit from Friday to Friday. And since we know that there was a nes that happened with the candles from Shuddus Mikra, now Rashi could reference the Bereishis Rabbah as a proof that it was 7 days. But that's not Takib Shuddus Mikra. That's a medrash that is connected to the Shuddus Mikra. Earlier, we asked the question about not the Seder, the order in Rashi. That the order that Rashi brings, these three events, these three Nisim, is different, that is opposite of the Medrash. We asked why. This question now becomes stronger, because Ha'ayla refers to the Anon. Sara refers to the Isa, to the dough. Imai refers to the Ner Dolok. So the way the Pasuk lays it out, the way the Medrash lays it out is consistent with the way it's alluded to in the pasuk. So this raises the question on Rashi even more: why does Rashi change the order? Sifei. But according to this, it makes the order in Rashi even less understood. Ner Dolok Me'erev Shabbos L'erev Shabbos. Rashi starts with talking about the Ner, and then he talks about the bracha in the dough. Not only is this opposite of the order in Medrash, it is also opposite of the way it is alluded to in the pasuk, as we just previously explained, that ha'oyala refers to the anon kasher, to the cloud that was suspended over the tent. Sara bracha mitzvah. Said that the word Sara refers to the blessing in the dough. Imay ner daluk, the word imay refers to the candle that was lit. Now, the Rebbe Bavarins in the brackets that maybe Rashi is telling it to us in the order that it happened. That she came on Friday afternoon and she lit her candles right away, and then you saw later a bracha in the dough, and then you saw after that you saw the anon. And Rashi says you can't say that. As they say that in Rashi is behesem and say that you can't explain that the order in Rashi is consistent with the order that it actually occurred with Rivka. Warum? Even if you were to accept that she arrived Friday right before it got dark, and the first thing she did upon arrival was to light her Shabbos candles. But it's obvious that the miracle within it would have been visible only after you saw the anon, because the nest doesn't happen until it lasts for a long time. Even if you say that once it goes to Sunday or to Monday, you're not waiting for 7 days, but the fact that it lasted a day, 2 days, 3 days is already a nes. But by then you would have seen the anon kasher, even if she didn't get bacony bread, but you would have already saw the anon, the cloud. So even if she lit the candles right away, but the nes, the miracle of the candles, doesn't really play itself out until later on, which at that point they would have certainly noticed the anon. Rashi should have started the way the Seder is in the pasuk, the order in the pasuk, and the way the order is in the Medrash. Which would have been the first thing that happened when Rivka entered into the tent. As soon as she entered into the tent, there was an anon, there was a cloud over the tent. And then a bracha in the tent, Nes was angesehen bald in ihres Askes mit Risa. As soon as she would start involving herself with dough, you would have seen the Nes of the Isa, of the bracha in the dough. And then you would see the Nes, that you would have seen in its complete form the next day of Shabbos. Whenever Sara came, even if she came on Friday. But then the fullness of the candles wasn't really experienced until the following Friday when the Ner was still lit. So the question is, why does Rashi not follow the order of the Medrash, which is the order of the Pasuk, which is also the order of how the miracles played themselves out? Is the beer in them? And the Rebbe gives a very simple explanation. Based on what we said until now, that what happens with Ha'ayala Sara Imay is that this is what is convincing. This is what is outweighing Yitzchak's doubts and telling Yitzchak this is the proper woman, the proper wife for you. And this is what brings about that Yitzchak should bring in Rivka to his home and take her as a wife. Because this is what showed that Rivka was similar to Sara, is a verstandig as lechele reish beikir is dann again vergleichen in Prat von Sitkes. So the first thing that Sara Yitzchak want to see is the similarity in their righteousness. And then in other areas. Und der Pfarrer bringt Rashi zum ersten dem Ness von Ner Dolok Mer Shabbos Ner Shabbos. And this is why Rashi brings the Ness of the candles first. It says that Ness in a mitzvah was is getan, a Ness in a mitzvah that she had done. But the Bible that is gebracht ir meile, ir tzidkes and kiyam mitzvah. And the fact that there was a miracle done, this expresses her quality. This expresses her righteousness in doing a mitzvah. If she does a mitzvah and the Eibusher does a miracle to her mitzvah, this shows that her mitzvah was done in the most perfect, most beautiful way. So the first thing Yitzchak wants to notice, wants to discover, is her righteousness. So Rashi starts, once we understand that Rashi is explaining the pasuk that these nisim are the nisim that convinced Yitzchak to marry Rivka, then the first thing that Yitzchak is going to convince Yitzchak is the righteousness of Rivka, the way Rivka does a mitzvah. And therefore Rashi starts with Ner Daluk, which was the mitzvah of Ner Shabbos Kodesh, and in that mitzvah there was a Nes. Then Rashi brings the bracha that was in the dough, which is also connected with the actions that Sara was taking, but not directly connected with a mitzvah. But so the bracha Mitzuya Be'isa is not a mitzvah that Rivka was doing, but it was an action that Sara was actually doing that led to a nes. So again, this is still connected with Rivka directly because it's her pu'ula, it's her action. And then at the end, the third thing that Rashi brings is something that is outside of Rivka's actions. That there was a cloud suspended over the tent. Nit in a mitzvah. But not because of a specific mitzvah or a specific action that she took. So the order in which it happened, or the order which it says it in the Medrash, is not the order in which it convinced Yitzchak. The order in which it convinced Yitzchak was first the mitzvah that she did, then which led to a nes, then the nes that happened because of the things that she was doing, and then a nes that happened due to her presence in general, but not connected with a specific mitzvah or action that she did. And with this, we concluded that Rashi, we now understand that Rashi, every part of Rashi is precise. The Dibra Maschil, Ha'ayala Sara Imay, is because those three words are not understood at first, and later will actually be the three nisim that occurred to the tent that convinced Yitzchak that Rivka was the proper wife. The reason why we know it's a nes is because it had to be something that would be bigger than what Eliezer told over, so that it should convince Yitzchak to marry his wife. Ha'ayala is the nes of the cloud. Sara is the nes of the dough. Ima is the nes of the Neder Shabbos Kodesh of the Friday candles that remained lit until the next Friday. And the reason that Rashi brings it in this order and not in the order of the Psukim is because it's in the order of how it convinced Yitzchak. Now we're going to go to the Inyanim Ufloim, the incredible ideas that could be derived from Rashi, and from the Inyanim Ufloim from the Pirush Rashi. Since according to this, the fact that Yitzchak took Rivka into his home and married her, not into his home per se, but into his to take her as a wife, is only after he saw that her candles were lit from Shabbos to Shabbos, as explained so beautifully up until now. Zet men derfun as the anhage von Rivkin is given to Tzin the Shabbos Kiddush, ich war the Chasana. So we see from here that Sarah's custom was to light her Shabbos candles even before she was married. Yitzchak buried her based on the fact that her candles remained lit from out of Shabbos to out of Shabbos. So it must be that even before she was married, she was already lighting Shabbos candles. Nochmer, additionally, Lei Das Rasha is the Rivka b'shas achastik when 3 years old. According to Rashi in Parshas Tildes, Rivka was 3 years old when she married Yitzchak. In the Melter, when she is noch nidad der chiyuv for mitzvahs, an age in which the person is not yet obligated to do mitzvahs, von deswegen hat sie schon damals mekayim when the mitzvah von adlakas neiris. And notwithstanding that, she nevertheless was lighting Shabbos candles. Rashi in Parshas Tildes says that Rivka was born right after the Akedah. And Yitzchak was 37 by the Akedah, because Yitzchak was, his mother was 90 years old when he was born, and she died at 127. So therefore that means that he was 37 years old. Then the pasuk says that Yitzchak was 40 when he married Rivka, so it must be that she was 3 years old. It's Pshut Shal Mikra. But from this we see that not only was Rivka lighting Shabbos candles before she was married, she was even lighting Shabbos candles before she was obligated in mitzvahs, even though it's before Matan Torah. But the Avos and obviously the Imahis were emulating and fulfilling the mitzvahs that would be done after Matan Torah. So after Matan Torah, a 3-year-old is not mechuyev mitzvahs, and nevertheless Rivka was lighting candles. We say to Mizu, das is given an inyan b'simen ikri av tzmevares an as harei Sara imay. Not only was she lighting candles, this became the indication and one of the primary reasons to choose, to prove that she is like Sara, his mother, and to decide to take her for a wife. And it's not the case that without her Shabbos candles, there wouldn't have been any candles in the house. Shabbos, but Avram Avinu doch mekayim ben kol Torah kula the mitzvahs derabanan. Rashi brings us that up. Avram Avinu fulfilled the entire Torah, even the mitzvahs derabanan, and Rashi brings this. So this is obviously, this concept that Avram fulfilled the whole Torah is obviously consistent with Pshut Shal Mikra. And the din is that if the woman is not lighting candles for whatever reason, the husband does it. Sara is nifte geworden. Hat Avram v'Yitzchak gesunden licht. The other of Shabbos. So we have to conclude that we have to accept that after Sara passed away, Avram, and in parentheses the Rebbe as also Yitzchak, would light candles every Erev Shabbos. I'm not exactly sure what the Rebbe means by Yitzchak, unless Yitzchak had his own tent, and if Yitzchak was living in a separate tent, then he too would light candles for his tent. Und von deswegen hat sich Rivka nicht benugt mit Lichtzinden von Avram Avinu. And nevertheless, Rivka did not suffice with the candles that were lit by Avram, but said is given a gadol mechuyev mitzvahs the shayach is Oz, who was an adult and therefore obligated in the mitzvahs that were applicable at that time. Nor she had allein gesunden licht. Nevertheless, she lit her own candles. Chatzi is demot given aktana bas gimel shanim, despite the fact that she was only 3 years old. And this is a very clear lesson. Behesem to them, was much feel more in continuation, consistent with what we've discussed already many times. In Hara 40, he references the Sichis of Chedesh Tishrei Tavshin Lamed. Throughout the whole Tishrei, the Rebbe continuously spoke about this concept. And this is already in Cheshvan. This is already Parshas Lech Lecha, I think. Chav Cheshvan, Shabbos Parshas Chaye Sara, Tavshin Lamed. So it's already deep into Chedesh Cheshvan. So the Rebbe had been discussing this fil mo as nit nor b'nei mitzvah fader chasna that from bench neder Shabbos, not only the girls or women that are past bas mitzvah and obligated in mitzvahs have to light Shabbos candles. As echt kleine medelach anevnik from 3 years old, but seine noch nit mechuyev mitzvahs, even young girls that are as young as 3 years old and not yet obligated in mitzvahs, if they're able to appreciate the significance of lighting Shabbos candles, they must be educated in their mitzvah and the mitzvah of lighting Shabbos candles. Even if the mother or others are already lighting the candles as a commanded individual, someone who's obligated according to din, nevertheless, just like Avram was already lighting, and nevertheless Rivka lit candles, so too today, even if the mother or other women are lighting candles in the house, the young girls, even as young as 3 years old, should light if they can understand what they're doing, they should light Shabbos candles. When a gamas Rivka is done by Ira Drayor given a sach mer basdas, Vidas is a medel stam in dem elter. Even if you're going to argue and say you can't compare to Rivka was much more mature than a regular 3-year-old. That we would see today. Vimezatas klar from the Basirig with Eliezer, we see very clearly with the occurrences with Eliezer. But so Badaigan and Maisim who was studying her actions. Und der Fartaka hat sich gefordert ihr das, and this is also why her consent was necessary. Ihr Zustimmung zum Shidduch, she had to agree to the shidduch. Bis wie Rashi sagt früher, as Rashi says earlier on, as man learned from Aris, as Emasin, as Aisha Stam Agdela Lemidaita, that even when you're marrying an adult, it has to be with her consent. And where do we learn it from? From Rivka. So obviously, Rivka was old enough, mature enough to give consent. Wie bald aber sie ist noch fort, gewähnt nicht mehr wie 3 Jahre alt. Asach Zeit for Bas Mitzvah. But nevertheless, after all, she was still way before her Bas Mitzvah. Hat sich doch al pi din Teire, hat sie doch al pi din Teire gehabt nach dem Din von a Ktana. So nevertheless, halachically speaking, she has the Din of a Ktana, of a minor, and therefore, we could learn from her that minors as well should light Shabbos candles. There's another. This is Inyan Nifla number 1. The wondrous concept that Rivka, despite the fact that she was so young and unmarried, she was already lighting Shabbos candles, which is a lesson for us today, that even someone who's not married, and even someone who's before Bas Mitzvah, even all the way to the age of 3 years old, should light Shabbos candles. Now the Rebbe is going to share with us another wondrous, another amazing, incredible idea that we learn from this Rashi and this idea, this concept. As we just mentioned, it's certain that Avram lit Shabbos candles every Erev Shabbos. When the Torah is made, as it is given, and the Torah testifies that Avram was already advanced in his age, and Hashem benched Avram with everything. Which obviously, certainly includes Beruchnis, that Avram was a very accomplished individual. So Avram was lighting Shabbos candles, and he was a very holy, spiritual, accomplished person. Und von deswegen ist in sein, wie in Yitzchak Sadlaka, nicht gewähnt die Nifle von Erdolak von Shabbos to Shabbos. And Avram's candle lighting did not play itself out that it remained lit from Erev Shabbos to Erev Shabbos. Wie das gegeben am Licht von Sara und danach bei Rivka, wenn sie dann geben sind Licht zu 3 Jahren, as it happened to Sarah's candles and later on to Rivka's candles when she started lighting from the age of 3. Und das happened dem gewaltigen Keach, was liegt in der Mitzvah von Lakas Haneres. And from this we see the incredible power that lies in the mitzvah of Shabbos candles. Even from the very small 3-year-old Jewish girls. Every Jewish girl every Jewish daughter is called the daughter of Sara, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah. That when she lights her Shabbos candles, this illuminates the entire home for the duration of the whole week. The Unterschied isn't them. The only difference is, but the candles that were lit by Sara and Rivka, their candles illuminated openly the physical home. Because the physical candle remained lit miraculously from Friday to Friday. But on a deeper level, this is true by every single woman and girl who lights candles. Even if you don't see the candle, the light remain lit for 7 days. Since the actions of our forefathers, and obviously the mothers as well, are an indication and an empowerment to all of their descendants. Every single woman who is a daughter of Sara, Rivka, etc., dem Koyach as the mitzvah lichtigkeit von ihr Shabbos, so Shabbos licht, so Peos and of the ganze Woche, has the ability, has the power that the mitzvah of her lighting Shabbos candles should have an impact on the entire week. So that's the second Inyan Nifla, the second wondrous thing. Number one, the idea, B'chlal, that even girls who are not yet obligated in mitzvah should light candles. And not only that, but another Inyan Nifla we see is that when they do light their candles, it has an impact. It illuminates the house, at least spiritually, for the whole week. And here we're going to focus specifically on the candles that are lit by the young girls over those lit by the adults. As if them how sich developed when the Chazal, when the sages express, praise the greatness of the breadth of the words of Torah that are studied, that sustain the world. They say that specifically the learning Torah of children sustains the world, because the breath that with which they speak the words of Torah has no sin. They're children, they are innocent of sin, and therefore it is the most pure Torah learning, and it sustains the world. And from this we can derive that when the girls who are under bas mitzvah, who light their Shabbos candles, it is the action of a hand that has no sin, and therefore it is even greater than the Shabbos candles that are kindled by the adults. But then you can ask a question. This technically this should apply to all mitzvahs that are done by children. And I don't find in Sfarim to discuss this Maila besides with regards to Limud HaTorah, that it's a Hevel Shein Bechet. In the Maisim, Asiyas Hayat Shein Bechet, you don't see that discussed anywhere. Obviously, it's something that's unique to Shabbos candles. So what is the uniqueness by Shabbos candles that we say that it's Asiyas Hayat Shein Bechet? Siftes. Tam was Tafke Dineris von Sara und Nifke und Zeich Dineris von alle Zeere Techter alle jüdische Frühen und Mädlach in alle Zeiten haben gebrannt mehr Shabbos Lev Shabbos. The reason that the natives of Sara Nifke, the women's candles, and this applies to the women and girls that light Shabbos candles throughout the generations, that they are the ones, like we said in the previous Seif, that illuminate the home, either physically or spiritually for the duration of the week. And this doesn't apply to the candles that were lit by Avram, and therefore by the men in the later generations. It's verstandig from the Maimer Azal, could be understood based on this Maimer Azal as their inyan from their man, the role of the husband. The Gemara discusses that the husband brings in raw wheat stalks, and the woman, she grinds them and she makes them into something that is edible. So, and now we're going to explain what that means more beruchni sayanyanim. So we say like this: the role of the husband is maybe chitin. Not in bringen sie rein in Stube rein. He brings them into the house. Und die Arbeit von der Frui von Ezer Kenegdoi, and the role of the woman is to his partner is to verwandeln die chitim in a meichel eladam, to transform these wheat stalks into something that is edible. Das heißt, der Rebbe hat eingestellt die Welt von Teva in Anefin als die starke Lichtbisch. The Eibishter established the nature of the world that a man is a conqueror. So der Oberin Sachen von der Dresdendiker Welt und sie reinbringen in sein Haus, to gather things from the world and bring them into the house. The role of the woman is the glory, the beautiful honor of the woman is inside. Und der Riber outside, the Akeres Abayis is the Eivgabe Pnima Innewenig. And since the woman is the Akeres Abayis, her role is on the inside, in Huis. To misaken sein und übermachen und die hereingebrachte Sachen, to rectify and to transform these things that were brought into the house. It says, I know you love them. They should be fitting for a person. Bis zu roi kivyachal adam elyon. And to the point that they should be befitting to the supreme man, which is referring to the Eibishter. Und der Riber, Shas Avram hat gebench Licht. When Avram lit candles wie bald is nicht sein Tafkid zu vernehmen sich mit Tzorach Yabai, since this was not his primary role to engage in the things that are within the house, or das nicht gedarf wirken bringen an Ness zu beleuchten die Huis in Gasvis die can sehen mehr wie Alpiteva. Nicht das ist ein Aveda. So it was not necessary for this to turn into a miracle that would shed this light, that would shine, illuminate this light into the house for the duration of the week. Davke Sara v'Rivke, und noch sie alle bnei Sara v'Rivke v'chulu, alle idische Techter. Was the Rebbe started saying, giving them tafkid on the shlichus to Eses and the Tzorchi Abayis. When it comes to Sara v'Rivka, however, and their daughters and descendants, which the Rebbe gave them this unique role to take care of the home, and to take care of the physical, material matters of the house. Haben sie die Schlichus und dem Keach zu bewirken und beleuchten mit sehr Eres, die ganze Stube Meshach von der ganzen Zeit, als den Meshach von alle Wochentag. Sagt man, dass es eine Stube, was Bas Sara v'Rivka in ihr angeschlossen in der Shabbos. Since the house is her place, is her domain, and this is where she accomplishes the role that she was given, therefore she has the power that when she lights the candles, it should impact the home for the duration of the week, that it should be seen and recognized that this is a home in which Shabbos candles were lit. So the third Inyan Nifla is that the role of the woman is unique, and therefore when you couple that with Hevel Shein Bechet, or Asiyas Yad Shein Bechet, you see that there's a beautiful milah specifically with children. So number one, we learned from this to light that Shabbos candles are something that's applicable even before the wedding, and even before Bas Mitzvah, and even at the age of 3 years old. Number two, we learned that there is the other Inyan Nifla was that there's a milah in the candles of the woman over the candles of the man. And number three, we said there's an Inyan Nifla in the milas of the candle of the young girls over the adults. And now we can go back. We already answered this question, why Rashi chooses the Seder, but now it'll make sense also on a deeper level. Why Rashi chooses the Seder, first Ner, and then Bracha Mitzuya Beisa, and then on the Kosher. First, we sagen, that the drei Inyanim was Rashi bringt, Ner Dolik Meir Shabbos Lev Shabbos, Bracha Mitzuya Beisa, on the Kosher Al that these three things that Rashi brings, and the drei mitzvahs and angezak Yevarim B'myuchat Tzidusha Techter, correspond to the three mitzvahs that are given uniquely to Jewish women and girls. Chala, Nida, which is Taras Mishpacha, when Adlakas Ner, the mitzvah of separating Chala, the mitzvah of family purity, and the mitzvah of lighting Shabbos candles. Durch Abbreiten die mitzvah of Adlakas Ner is Ner Dolok Meir Shabbos Lev Shabbos. By keeping the mitzvah of Shabbos candles, this keeps the candle lit for the entire week. The Zirus mitzvah Chala, when a person is careful in the mitzvah of Chala, Peil Tes Vazayin Bracha Mitzuya Beisa, this causes that there should be a blessing in the dough. And through the Zirus mitzvah Nida, and through the scrupulousness in the mitzvah of family purity, is menzechet on a kosher ala oil tada brengte on a shchina. We are zeicha. We merit the cloud over the tent. The cloud obviously represents the shchina, that the purity of the person of the family brings the cloud of the shchina. And according to the chronological order of these mitzvahs, Rashi lays out the order of these three things, but that an uphaking from the drei mitzvahs which are dependent on these three mitzvahs. As soon as the girl reaches the age of education, she begins to keep the mitzvah of lighting candles, and therefore Ner Dolok Meir Shabbos Lev Shabbos. Therefore, Rashi mentions that Ner Dolok first. Später, wenn sie wird älter und sie hebt an zu helfen in Stub, Arbeit, when she gets a little bit older and she helps out in the home, she is involved in baking the bread, bracha mitzuya beisa, and therefore the next thing is that she sees is the bracha in the dough. So Rashi mentions that second. Later on, when she gets married, then she fulfills the mitzvah of family purity, on kosher ala oil, and then she sees the third nace, the anon, the cloud of the Shechina suspended over her tent. So the order in which Rashi brings it is the order of the three mitzvahs that are connected to these three nisim as they occur in a regular woman's life. And over here, obviously, you see the letters, the next two paragraphs in very, very bold letters, which is very unusual in Likutei Sichos, but it's obviously meant to emphasize this as strongly as possible. From the Malim is verstandig der Gedel Aschus. From this we understand the great privilege. Was is da in der Ishtadlus, which exists in the effort as yet the idische Mädele. That every Jewish girl, as soon as she reaches the age of education, should light her candles every Erev Shabbos Kedesh Erev Yom Tov. And through fulfilling this mitzvah of lighting the Shabbos candles, we will merit, as the Yalkut Shmini says, to the Neides Tzion, to the candles of Tzion of Yerushalayim, which the Eibishter will show us, the Karev Mamish Begula Amitis Vashlema.